John Irvine. The gifted Shetland artist who came to Dunedin in middle age and left behind stunning portraits of pioneer Otago's leading citizens.
Sometimes it can be a real challenge to work out why a particular individual or family emigrated, and even more so, why they chose Otago as their destination. John Irvine, for example, was a successful portrait painter in Scotland, perhaps the finest artist ever to emerge from these isolated Shetland Islands. And yet, he ended his days in faraway Dunedin.
To be fair, he also established a good business in Otago as a portrait painter, at a time when Dunedin had a significant class of business and social leaders who welcomed the chance to immortalise themselves in oil. Toitu has an excellent selection of Irvine's paintings, and his commissions included some of the settlement's key pioneer identities, including Captain Cargill and Reverend Thomas Burns, as well as his fellow Shetlander, Sir Robert Stout.
He began life far, far to the north, here at Lerwick on Shetland in 1805. His father, William Irvine, is thought to have been a merchant, but he had earlier served in the Royal Navy and had survived an horrific shipwreck off the coast of Cape Town in South Africa in 1799.
Caught in a hurricane against the lee shore, HMS Sceptre went down in full view of horrified observers from the nearby land. William Irvine was one of just 42 from its crew of 400 who escaped the calamity. But he had been severely injured in the wreck and died from those injuries in 1815, when John, his eldest son, was just 10.
Irvine's obituary notes how his father's death left him to fight his own way in the world, but somehow he managed to both earn a living and study art. That included some time living here in Edinburgh, where he lived at what was then North Melville Place, as well as later at the Royal Academy in London, where he studied alongside men who had become leading British artists.
Irvine was their equal in talent, however, receiving a prize medal in 1828 and being elected an Associate of the Royal Scottish Academy in 1834. He furthered his studies by walking through France, painting and earning his living along the way.
Back in Shetland in 1836, he married a fellow islander, Jessie Lesk, here in Hillswick. They then removed to Edinburgh, where they had 2 children, and John established a successful art practice, selling his work commercially and earning a fine reputation as a portrait painter. But their daughter having died and their son emigrated to Australia, the elder Irvines followed him in 1859, and John set up in practice in Melbourne as a portrait painter and exhibited at numerous exhibitions. In 1863, the family relocated to Dunedin, where John took a studio here in Farleigh Hall on Princess Street, and at the age of 58, reinvented himself as Dunedin's first professional portrait painter.
It has been suggested that the relocation may have been prompted by his son's mental illness, which saw him confined to the Dunedin Lunatic Asylum from this time until his death in 1890. John did some pioneering work as a lithographer for the Otago Witness in 1865-66 and exhibited at the Dunedin International Exhibition in 1865. He also continued sending work back to Britain for exhibition and was the first president of the Otago Art Society when it formed in 1876 and one of its keenest members.
The death of his wife in 1878 was a severe blow from which John never really recovered. He died himself 10 years later, aged 83, after several years of ill health.
An obituary paid tribute to his kindness of disposition and his extreme modesty, for he was shy like a woman and sensitive to a degree. He had not what is called finish, but he was a faithful worker with an artist's eye and an artist's feeling.
He'd always kept in contact with his brother back in Shetland, and his name is still held in high regard here as perhaps one of the island's greatest ever artists. This is just one of the many links between this isolated outpost far to the north of mainland Scotland with its intermingled heritage of Scottish and Scandinavian influences, and Otago, to which so many of its 19th century immigrants found their way.